Hey everybody, this is Melissa. This is going to be my video on a vaginal birth that is induced, a C-section, and me planning my Vbac. Okay, so some of you may not agree, but that's fine. You can have your own birthing experience, but this is my point of view. I feel like a lot of women rush into induction, into C-section. My firstborn daughter was induced, suffered major complications from the induction. Not only was I hypercontracting, her heart rates were dropping. She was born with severe head injuries, which was called a traumatic brain injury, which is bleeding in the brain, blood clots in the brain. She had skull fractures, a huge open cut on the back of her head, which is now a huge scar. She was born dead. Her head was coned straight up badly. Her soft spot was bulging. It was horrific. All because of being induced, I'm sure, because they knew how big my daughter's head was. They knew that she was measuring 4 weeks larger on ultrasound, and I was still induced, you know? And me being young, I agreed with the doctor to go ahead and do it because the doctor thought it was best, you know, that we go ahead and do the induction. It was her ideal, so I went forth and I went with it. I should have done my research first, because if I would have known what could have happened, I would have never been induced. Nobody told me that this type of thing could happen during an induction. That's why I preach to women on Facebook who are telling people that they're going to get induced. I tell them all the time. I tell them, well, you may end up with a C-section, or this could happen, or this could happen. Ladies, please, 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 if anything, learn from my story and know that an induction is not necessary. I believe that we should wait. If you're pregnant for 38 weeks, 39 weeks, 37 weeks, what's another few weeks going to do? You know, another few weeks is going to build your baby's lungs, it's going to mature your baby, it's going to make your baby healthier. By inducing, you're forcing the baby down when the baby may not be ready. And this type of thing can happen. It's happened. It's happened to my daughter. She had a halo around her head because she was too large to be born vaginally. You know? My second child, she was C-section because of my first daughter's delivery. Did I want a C-section? Of course not. I wanted to have a vaginal birth. But the doctor scared me into believing that a C-section was the best thing. And right before the C-section, I wanted to go home. I cried. I told him to take the catheter out. I told him I couldn't do it. But, of course, doctors put that fear in you, and they tell you, you know, this could happen, and, you know, it makes you feel like crap. So I went forth and went with the C-section. And lo and behold, my child had a normal size head, normal size shoulders, and perfectly healthy, normal child. Granted, I did not get bonding with my first child. I just didn't get it because it was stolen from me, basically. I was robbed of bonding time. My epidural did not work with my first child's labor, because once again, I was hypercontracting, and her heart tones kept dropping and dropping and dropping, and she was in distress, and nobody was listening to me. I was pleading for a C-section because I knew that my daughter was in distress, and nobody would listen. Vbac birth. I'm planning a natural, 100% natural birth, meaning no medical interventions, no pain medicine, no epidurals, no nothing. After my C-section, I think I only took one half of a pill, and that was like right after, and I was still numb. But other than that, I didn't take any of them painkillers in the hospital, and that's because I have a high pain tolerance, and I wanted to go home. So my whole thing here is, if I'm planning a natural delivery, I don't want to risk another child by listening to a doctor. I don't want to have that bonding moment ripped away from me and never get that back, because once it's gone, it's gone. You don't get that back ever, ever. And all you can do is go from that day that you started bonding with your child. You know, and it's not fair. It's not fair to me as a mother. It wasn't fair to my firstborn daughter to have to go through such a traumatic birth because doctors failed to properly perform a C-section on a child who was clearly in distress, clearly should have never been born vaginally, and they failed to respond to that. You know, and she suffered from it. She still suffers from it. She's going to be 10 years old, and there's lots of times when she acts much, much, much younger. She's got this huge scar on the back of her head, and no hair grows there. Can you imagine living with a huge scar on the back of your head with no hair growing there? Anyways, I believe that, and just like people who say, well, I want a C-section. Ladies, please let God work His wonders. If you got pregnant, your baby should be big enough for you to birth. Had I waited, I'm sure Desiree would have been able to fit out of me vaginally. Because during an induction, your baby is pounding down. But because of the Pitocin. Especially if you're hypercontracting. Now, regular labor feels, I'm sure, nothing like hypercontracting. I had out of the world pain. So, if you're thinking about an induction or thinking about a C-section, please think differently. It's not good. It's not good at all. Especially if you end up with going through all this pain of an induction only to end up with a C-section, or to end up with a traumatic birthing experience, you know, or even with a C-section. Why go through a C-section and have that a C-section is major abdominal surgery, okay? And lots of things can go wrong there. And you're risking that by going ahead and doing a C-section. If you have not watched Business of Being Born 2, I believe it's called 2, watch it. They talk about all this stuff. And you can learn a lot. I've learned so much that I never knew. I never knew that induction could cause what had happened to my daughter. I never knew that I could have just got up and walked out and said, screw the doctors who wanted to do the C-section on me. I never knew that. But you know what? I know now. I wish I would have known then. Because I would have never, ever allowed anybody to induce me. I would have never allowed the C-section. I would have went ahead and went natural. That's what we were made to do. They didn't have all this crazy induction stuff way back in the day. Why do we have it now? C-sections rates are so high because women want to have their babies early. Well, instead of having your baby early, wait the other 2 weeks or a week. It's not going to hurt you. You waited this long. Why go and have your baby early? I'm sorry, but unless if your baby is like 10, 11 pounds, there's no reason why you can't push that baby out. This is just my view, so please don't get mad at me. Bye.